Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Katie and Nancy, for the invitation and for the introduction. Just before I start, we've got some really nice news we'd like to share with the group and the network. The fabulous Nina Teasdale, another one of our own. Nina is a postdoc research fellow in the Y Centre and has just found out in the last hour or so that she has one of her articles, which has appeared in Work, Employment and Society, has been nominated in the running for one of the best papers of 2021. So that announcement will be, the decision will be made in June, but she's one of 5 in the running. So huge congratulations to Nina. It's very exciting and great recognition of her fabulous work. There's a big smiley face from Nina there. So, and it goes, I mean, Nina's work around flexible working, around childcare, employment practices, a whole range of gender and labour market gender employment issues is obviously one of the core areas of research here at WISE in the Centre for Economic Justice, where we take a feminist approach to our research and to our teaching. Our research and teaching is underpinned by feminist policy analysis, feminist public policy and political science, feminist economics. And I'm on Sarah's computer, so I need to see what I'm doing here. No, right, I'm on the wrong. Oh, there we go. Right. So, and in common with many of us at GCU, our research is aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, and GCU colleagues particularly will be familiar with the front page of the university website at the moment, which is celebrating GCU status as #1 for gender equality research in the UK in relation to Sustainable Development Goals impact, and amongst the top 5 in the world in relation to gender equality research and SDGs impact. And at WISE, our research is very much aligned to the SDGs, and particularly in relation to the eradication of poverty and the advancement of gender equality, but also around SDGs 8 and 10 on decent work and reducing inequalities. And relevant to our topic today, we're looking at SDG, we engaged in SDGs 16 and 17 in relation to the importance of strong institutions and partnerships in order to effect sustainable change. We regularly revisit this core, what are our core areas of research focus, because as an interdisciplinary research centre, we have a whole range of research topics and research projects on the go, including our expanding PhD base as well. There's a whole range of PhDs from migration, globalisation, migrants, refugees and asylum issues, through a whole range of labour markets issues, and across sort of regional economic development and gender budgeting, human rights, etc. So it's a wide range. So trying to narrow that down into what's the kind of umbrella headings for our research focus. So we've come up with these 4 areas of research that are catch-alls for this broad programme of work in which we're engaged: labour market and household inequalities, political economy of care, public policy and institutional change, and migration rights and resources. And obviously the theories of justice, the historical origins of inequality, a human rights-based approach, and how to take human rights-based responses to public policy challenges, and theories around activism and social change inform our approach to our research, teaching and engagement across a range of publics. And so the public, in a sense, that we're going to talk most about today is in relation to Scottish Government, but not just the Scottish Government, how we work with other civil society organisations around the political economy of care and advancing arguments to bring about public policy and institutional change, principally in relation to care and the care economy. That's at least what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to talk a little bit about work we've done with sister organisations at the UK level, the UK Women's Budget Group, academic networks, including the Global Challenge Fund project that has been led by Nina with colleagues in academia and civil society in South Africa. And Sarah will talk a bit about some recent work she's been involved in at the UN. So we'll hopefully do a quick tour from Scotland to South Africa and back in our time. And Katie and Nancy, you can keep me right. Otherwise I will talk for Scotland. So in in the before times, 2018, maybe 2019, the UK Women's Budget Group launched the Commission for a Gender Equal Economy, and I had the honour of being a commissioner on that commission, which was chaired by Diane Elson, Professor Diane Elson, who's a visiting prof here at WISE. And after a series of commissioned papers, think pieces, evidence sessions in Belfast, London, Glasgow, Newcastle, I think, and Sheffield, thank you, and Cardiff. We came up with a big report, but with a focus on the care economy at the heart of our vision. So a caring economy that would deliver in terms of care provision, support people giving care and receiving care, as we all do throughout our lifetimes in different ways, at different levels of intensity and for longer or shorter periods. And a focus on a caring economy, an economy that doesn't punish workers, that recognises the value of paid and unpaid care, is also about realising greater gender equality, decoupling gender relations in relation to the provision of care and social stereotypes and expectations attributed to women and men. Jobs in care are sustainable jobs. They're sustainable because we need the provision of care. They produce significant economic returns, but they're also green jobs. And that through a caring economy, we would improve everybody's well-being, ultimately, planetary, individual and collective well-being in terms of our general health, and the health of our economy by changing the economic model to recognise the centrality, our reliance on care, paid and unpaid. And as Marlon Waring, who's been a big influencer of our thinking here at WISE and is an honorary prof, was made an honorary professor some time ago. Marlon said, if you're not visible as a producer of the economy, then you are invisible in the distribution, the policy distribution of benefits. So in other words, unpaid care, which many of us provide, isn't counted. Care jobs and care provision are seen as a cost. So paid care work is seen as a cost to the economy rather than as a significant contribution to economic well-being at the individual level as well as at the collective, the macroeconomic level. But when people are invisible, if people aren't counted, then they become invisible, is one of the core sort of mantras of Marlon Waring. And it's been the mission of WISE since Ailsa Mackay inaugurated WISE some 10 years ago, and that's what we're celebrating this afternoon at our public lecture with Diane Elson. That if women remain invisible in the labour market, if unpaid care remains invisible, then that means across public policy domains that those lived effects of that invisibility are not recognised. And so we see gendered decisions being made across public policy and across economic policy in relation to taxation, in relation to social security, in relation to skills and labour market, where policies, unless they have a robust gendered and an intersectional gendered analysis, will continue to reproduce the unequal outcomes and the unequal conditions that feed the gender pay gap, that feed the differences in life chances, and that feed and sustain occupational segregation. And so within the Commission, we were saying, well, firstly, we need to re-envision what we mean by the economy. And the economy is bigger than and different from what we sometimes are told the economy is, in terms of reducing it to GDP, to gross domestic product, the things that we can see because they're products and services taken to market, or bridges and roads that are built, you know, the shovel-ready economy, the hard hat economy of capital investment. And so core to the work of the Commission was about promoting the idea of investment in care as investment in social infrastructure. But also part of that infrastructure requires us to transform the worlds of paid and unpaid work, recognising how central care, whether that's childcare, caring for sick or disabled family members or friends over a longer or shorter period, is not just, you know, the domain of women. But when we've talked before in this group about the implications during lockdown and what the withdrawal of paid care services meant for women's work in particular, and that withdrawal from paid employment when care services in the community were withdrawn, many women had to give up paid work to continue to care for people. So we need to transform what we understand by work, and work in its paid and unpaid forms in relation to care. And so we said there are 8 steps to this. I'm not going to go through them all, but they are ambitious and global. They are systemic, so refocusing fiscal and monetary policy, transforming tax systems, tackling the international trade and economic systems. So we were nothing if not ambitious in the Commission on Care. On the Commission on a Gender Equal Economy, sorry. And that work has informed hugely the policy influencing work that we seek to do in Scotland. And one of the main things that we've been involved in for a long number of years now in Scotland is gender budgeting. And that's been the focus of my work and my research for a long time. Gender budgeting, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is about challenging the assumptions that budgets are gender neutral, that it's really just about moving money around across spreadsheets. We start from the premise that budgets are not neutral because public spending on public services is about people. The public finance is raised from taxation and other ways in which public finance is raised and is spent on people. And so we have to also start, I think, with the premise that how a government spends its money, which is our money, how a government spends our money reflects their priorities. And so if a government is not spending on social security, is not spending on care services, is not spending, but is perhaps spending on arms or massive capital projects, then we can see where their priorities lie. And so thinking from the point of view of a caring economy, we would be looking to see much more investment in care services, in the care workforce, building skills, building a workforce, which in turn contributes back through a range of multiplier effects through employment and tax revenue. So gender budgeting examines how public resources are allocated. It looks to see what the impact is on women and men. So we can look at tax, for example, changes in tax policy, which normally benefit men, changes in social security, which normally result in catastrophic outcomes, particularly for women, particularly for women lone parents with multiple children or older women. And by doing that kind of analysis before decisions are made, doing that analysis to inform decision making can and should result in resources being redistributed differently in order to advance equality between women and men. And so we spend a lot of time trying to encourage not just the Scottish Government, but other governments to use a better approach to gender impact assessment in their policy analysis, gather more and interpret better and apply better gender data analysis to reveal the different outcomes for women and men from policy and finance decisions. And in doing that, we're challenging established economic models to try and eliminate discriminatory outcomes. So with every slide, I realised just how the scale of our ambition here and what it is we're trying to do. So the goals of gender budgeting, according to Rhonda Sharp, who's another friend of WISE, she's a preeminent global scholar based in Australia and gave the Ailsa Mackay lecture in 2019. Rhonda says the goals of gender budgeting are to raise awareness and understanding of gender issues and the impacts of policies and budgets, making governments accountable for their gender budget and policy commitments, and changing and refining budgets in order to promote gender equality. So this is what Diane is going to be talking about this afternoon at 5 o'clock. She's giving the Ailsa Mackay Memorial Lecture just before Diane retires, actually. So we're very, even extra honoured to have Diane with us today. And she'll be offering her reflections over 30 years of advocating for and working for and doing a whole range of analysis at different levels of institutions on gender budgeting. So if you haven't already registered, you're very welcome to come along. So what we've been trying to do in Scotland, these are just some of the ways in which we interact with the Scottish Government. I'm chair of the Scottish Government's Equality and Budgets Advisory Group, which is a really unusual setup with a range of external members, including Audit Scotland, COSLA, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the Scottish Human Rights Commission, Scottish Women's Budget Group, and officials from the Exchequer, from the Performance and Strategy Unit, from the Equality and Human Rights Directorate and the Economy Directorate. And what we're trying to do there is support process changes within government to support the kinds of analysis that I've been talking about. The First Minister's National Advisory Council on Women and Girls, some of you may have heard of, and they have made, at the end of their phase 1 report, they made a recommendation to kind of strengthen the need for intersectional gender budget analysis. And I have recently been appointed to the Advisory Council. There's a new review of strategic funding of violence against women and girls, which I'm also a member of. Also a member of the Open Government Project Action Plan on Fiscal Transparency. They really have to get shorter names for these things. The Disability and Carers Benefits Advisory Group has been running for a while, and that's been running since Social Security, a number of Social Security benefits transferred to Scotland following the 2016 Scotland Act and the creation of the Social Security Agency in Scotland. I was a member last year of the Social Renewal Advisory Board and a non-party member of the SNP Commission on Justice and Fairness. And those two areas were really, they coincided with the work on the Commission for a Gender Equal Economy. So it was really opportune to be able to take the work from the Commission on a Gender Equal Economy into both these arenas. And it would be even better if the recommendations were to be acted upon. Nina and previously Emily Thompson from WISE have been on the Gender Pay Working Group, and Sarah was on the Gender Equality Index Working Group. And any number of us have been giving evidence across the years to various committees of the Scottish Parliament, including the Finance Committee and the Equalities and Human Rights Committee. So we've been trying to do gender budgeting, to influence gender budgeting in the Scottish Government since 2000. I've been EBAG chair since 2018. In 2018-19, Sarah, myself and otherwise, Nina and Emily and others from WISE ran a training programme with the Economy Directorate on gender analysis and gender and economic analysis. I think we need to do it again, given what the content of the National Strategy for Economic Transformation. The advisory group on economic recovery, we provided written evidence to that. We did some background briefing on that. You can read about what we wrote and thought about the outcomes and the process there. You can read on the WISE blog. Colleagues Sarah, Nina and Michelle Hilton-Boone, the Ailsa Mackay Research Fellow at WISE, have just started a new project on household analysis, looking at some of the data around COVID. So for the COVID-19 Learning and Evaluation Group. The new strategy for economic transformation has been published, and we've had some engagement with the public, with the Cabinet Secretary and around that. And on Monday, the Scottish Government announced a Centre for Expertise in Equality and Human Rights. And we've been involved in trying to shape the training and thematic analysis there. And I think the Centre for Expertise in Equality and Human Rights is a form of something we've been arguing for a long time, to build the capacity and build knowledge within the Scottish Government. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to move on really quickly to some of the work that we've been doing internationally. As I say, the Global Challenges Fund work led by Nina, and Sarah's going to talk to you about her work at UN Women.
Okay, you do the other one afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, so I suppose if just go back to that other slide for 2 seconds, because I think they are interesting, because in a sense they are kind of overlap, and again they overlap what we're doing here in Scotland, particularly, as you can see, led by Angela. But we've come to what we're trying to do with the Global Challenges Fund money in terms of this gender research network. But it does go back to that question, or that point that Angela said at the very beginning, in terms of the SDGs and building partnerships. And so partnerships across academia, with other universities, and then of course, not only with government, but with NGOs and with multinational organizations. And one of those obviously is the UN. And during COVID, I was appointed as a resident expert to this thing called the UN Global Crisis Bureau, which I'd never even heard of. But anyway, and to be quite honest, I don't know if I've been all that much help to them, because the UN is almost a world in and of itself, and it takes a very long time to even get up to speed with their terminology. But they did ask us to do a number of specific tasks, and myself and Nina worked on those, and there were 2 publications came out of them. It was looking at care responses during the pandemic, during, and how that might, go into the recovery, so that it wasn't just a response, how it might be incorporated into policy ongoing. And it was for the region of Europe and Central Asia. So again, I had to just take out my map and see what country was where, and reveal my own ignorance to myself. But so I did one report just on Serbia itself, and Serbia, it turned out, had very, very positive gender responses. And so they were, unbeknownst to themselves even, highly ranked in terms of how they tried to focus on well, any vulnerable minority, which they did, in terms of like a temporary cash transfers, like a basic income scheme on a temporary basis, but also some very gender specific policies. And then myself and Nina did one looking at the whole region. And we've done a little bit of ongoing work, not too much since, now that everything has died down with the pandemic, but we've done a little bit, continue to do a little bit of work and gender training for the Economic Council in Moldova and in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So it might just be go in for a day or two, and very much along the lines what Angela was describing that we did with the Scottish Government, just kind of raise awareness among those who are actually enacting policy as to how to bring gender center stage.
Great, gosh, that's really exciting. And another area of international work, which is again really exciting, and I think the comparisons and the comparative work we were doing with colleagues in South Africa during lockdowns was really, really interesting. And as you all know, the international work that we all do, influences our teaching, influences our policy influencing, and our research. So thanks to Nina pulling all of this together, a successful bid to the Global Challenges Research Fund allowed us to start activity with colleagues in South Africa, in a couple of universities. We had high hopes to be going to South Africa in early 2020, but something happened that I can't quite remember what it was. Something happened that meant we couldn't go. I know, we're all set to go. We could have ended up being stuck in South Africa for about 6 months. So this collaboration, as I say, with academics and increasingly with civil society organisations, looking at what was going on in relation to care and care economy within South Africa and Scotland and the UK. There was a strong focus on kinship care and grandparents from South Africa, but that then resulted in work between, or rather with colleagues in South Africa, Sarah and Nina, and some publications from that. But our aim was to develop a long-term shared research agenda around gender and family care work, paid and unpaid, and employment. And so we have plans and still have hopes for some knowledge exchange visits, but obviously COVID-19 interrupted them. We were looking at care in the work of the pandemic and had a couple of virtual seminars and workshops. We were also exploring different methods, different research methods, including digital storytelling, around how to capture some of these experiences. And certainly those of you researching in the UK context are very familiar with the, I think, increasingly overused phrase around lived experience. But it also meant we were looking at some issues around time use, which is the focus of one of our PhD researchers, Ella Christensen, who is a member of this group and I think has presented to the group before. So the focus looked at the differing impacts of COVID-19 and government responses, and as I say, particularly the role of grandparents in informal childcare provision in South Africa and the UK, and that resulted in a joint publication in a special issue of Feminist Economics. And these are the core findings from the work by Nina, Ellen and Sarah. So informal provision stopped in the first lockdown. Significant contributions again of unpaid care work to support by grandparents to support working parents, and similarly in South Africa, grandparents informal care, which is already a pretty high level of care, intensified. But some of the government responses were interesting there around how they supported or failed to support older people. So the work continues around intersectional understanding of childcare provision and intergenerational interdependence, which is one of Nina's research specialist areas. So we're hopeful this work will continue. There's more publications in the pipeline. I know colleagues are busy preparing publications for another special issue. And that's all generating evidence that we can take back to the Scottish Government and others, but it also informs our teaching, and I'll end on this point. WISE, WISE doesn't have any full-time staff, doesn't have any staff at all. We're all here on a voluntary basis supporting and running the research centre, and many of in economic and social justice, and many of us, including from this network, including Katie, teach on the Masters in Human Rights, which comes out of the Social Sciences Department. So we have 2 master's programmes that are led by WISE and by WISE members, where everything that we've been talking about in the last half hour informs our teaching, and our research base informs our teaching, and hopefully the next generation of feminist economists and feminist policy analysts. So on that, I will try to stop sharing and we can have a chat.